Welcome to our presentation, Van Andel Institute for Education, all about elevating student voice and leadership for K-12 administrators. Today's presentation is brought to you by our Science on the Grand conference. This conference is a great opportunity for teachers to network with fellow teachers, to really fuel their professional and personal spirit, all in the heart of downtown Grand Rapids. Mark your calendars for July 14th and 15th, and for every paid teacher registration, an administrator can go free. Okay. And I'd like to introduce today our featured presenter. We have Dr. Julie Lamb with us. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
So glad you are here. Julie is in her 20th year in education in the Chicagoland area. She has experience as a high school science teacher, a museum educator, and a school and district administrator. She's currently serving as the principal of East Layton High School in Franklin Park, Illinois. And she's also a member of our advisory council at the Van Andel Institute for Education and also the College Board Midwestern Regional Council. So Julie, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I am so excited to be here today with everyone to present to you elevating student voice and leadership. This is something that I have thought about in my practice for quite some time. And now that I'm in the role of a principal, I have the opportunity to really have it come to life. At multiple levels. So not only in the classroom level, but at the building level. And I'm also in a school district that has building voice and leadership at the district level, which I'm so excited to share with everyone as well. So for today, in the presentation, I have parceled it out into 4 main parts. The first part, I will go over a brief introduction about student voice and leadership. And then I'm going to go into how it could look like at the 3 different levels, at the classroom level with teachers, at the building level with faculty and staff, including admin, and then at the district level where you have administrators, the Board of Education, community groups, and families as well. So to kick us off for the introduction, I would like to ground us in a quote. Adam Fletcher is an author and he has written about student voice. The quote that resonates with me and really fits in with this presentation is that meaningful student involvement is the process of engaging students as partners in every facet of school change for the purposes of strengthening their commitment to education, community, and democracy. So oftentimes when we think of students at school, it is about them receiving an education. So it's more of a passive role that they play when we're talking about that. And when we look at elevating student voice and leadership, it centers the education on the students themselves, where they are active knowledge builders and active skill builders as well. This is a democratization of power, and it also helps our students build agency. And if we start when they're younger and then scaffold it and really build up, they're going to be amazing self-advocates and community advocates when they get older, and then eventually we want them graduating high school and becoming global citizens. So educators should provide that scaffolding and be very clear in the purpose for our students. So to start us off, I'm going to describe how this can look like at the classroom level. And earlier in my own personal bio introduction, it was shared that I was a high school science teacher, but I also had the experience being a museum educator. I worked in exhibits and also teacher programs at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago for about 3.5 years. And it was really during that time that I embraced student voice and student leadership because I could see the possibilities that it brings. And within the museum, it was interesting because while it was the Museum of Science and Industry, they really focused on improv. And if anyone has experience in improv, you'll be familiar with the phrase yes and. So improv is very supportive in terms of who you're working with. So they could throw something out there and you are supposed to respond yes and. And the reason why at MSI they chose to use improv is because our students at a very early age are so curious about the world around them, and they may not have the academic vocabulary to accurately describe a phenomenon that they're observing, but they are going to ask wonderful questions about the world around them. And it's our job and responsibility to encourage that so that we don't see this dip when they're older and they're looking at science and saying that they're not good at it, or they're looking at math and they're saying they're not good at it. So we really want to cultivate the voice, and then that will lead to leadership. So here are some things that an administrator can do in elevating student voice and leadership in the classroom level. And it's really about supporting teachers. So you can see these 4 options that are listed here, and I'm using action words here. So one example is giving permission. And I know that for many of us, we don't feel that we need to give permission to our teachers so that they can cultivate student voice within their classroom. But sometimes that's what teachers need to hear, that it's okay to do these things and we support it. So teachers welcome explicit permission, and some may already be doing this, and it would be great validation for the practice that they're already doing in their classroom. Another action phrase that I use here is providing options. So after you explicitly share with teachers the permission to do this and to cultivate this in their classrooms, they may need some help in what that looks like. So I always like to give teachers some concrete examples of what it could look like in their classrooms. And I aim for things that are low prep or no prep so that they could turn around and implement things in their classrooms fairly quickly. And in my time at the Museum of Science and Industry working in teacher programs, that was a tenet that we grounded our practice on. If a teacher is working on something and it takes an exorbitant amount of time and effort, it's most likely not going to get off the ground. But if we provide them with options that are more easy for them to and more efficient for them to implement in their classroom, we're most likely going to see that. Another action word that I have in here is modeling. So in addition to the options that you could provide them, modeling those options at a staff or faculty meeting and maybe highlighting one of those practices in a staff newsletter. For me, myself, as a high school principal, I do share a staff newsletter once a week. So it could be something that I highlight in a recurring section in my newsletter. And then another action word that I use here is visiting. So when you provide the permission, when you provide the options, when you model for teachers, it's always great to visit classrooms to see what's going on. And some teachers may invite you into their classrooms. Maybe you just want to pop in and see how it's going. But when we see these in action, we want to be supportive of teachers because for some of them, it may be something new and innovative that they're trying out. And we want to cultivate that type of culture in our classroom. So on this slide, I am giving a couple different examples of activities that we could do to elevate student voice and leadership. And I've also separated them out as appropriate for elementary level and secondary level. But you yourself as an administrator, you can pick and choose what's appropriate because you know your teachers better and you know your students better as well. So if something is listed under goal setting for elementary, but you think that it's usable at the secondary level, I would encourage you to do so. So these are just examples just to get those creative juices flowing. So for goal setting, for the elementary level, one idea and example that I have is using sentence stems. And the sentence stem that I used is, if things were going great, we would see Julie doing something. So this is something that a student would reflect upon and then possibly use as a writing exercise. At the secondary level, and if we can scaffold it, we could use things such as SMART goals. So we're going to talk to students about what it means to be measurable. What does it mean to be time bound? So we're giving them a little bit more of the criteria and constraints when they are goal setting for themselves. So as a principal, I actually led my building admin team in the goal setting exercise that it's identified for elementary. So again, use what works for you in your role with your students and with your teachers and staff. So the way that I did it was I modeled for my team something that I wrote for myself. And I said, if things were going great, we would see Julie out and about in the building more often and checking in with each team member more consistently throughout the day. So that's something that's easily accessible and understandable. And it's something that I could measure because I put in there that I'm doing this every day and I'm more consistent with it. Another example is self-assessment. So at the elementary level, it could look like after, let's say, students read a paragraph or a page, they use a scale of 1 to 10 to rate their understanding of the content, or in the case of you're having them perform a skill, rate their performance of that skill from 1 to 10. And this requires them to really think about how they did themselves, right? Self-assessment is so important to develop in our students early on because we want to build reflective learners. At the secondary level, in addition to using a 1 to 10 scale, you can also have some open-ended questions for the students and have them write that down in a journal. So it could be something that at the end of every week, they do a self-assessment based on some of the standards that the teacher was teaching. And they can talk about how they did in the understanding of the content or the performance on the skill. The last example that I have is activity choice. So this one is interesting because they really have a voice in how the lesson plays out in the classroom. So at the elementary level, you could provide students with 2 to 3 options to choose from. And one piece of advice I would give is if you do have students vote on it, we never want to develop a culture where, we're pitting one group of students against another. So you could say and be very clear in the purpose and the procedure that you're gathering their choices from them, but you as the teacher are going to make the final call. If you think that students in your classroom are ready for it and you can have, raising hand and just doing a simple count from there, you could do what's appropriate for that classroom. At the secondary level, what this could look like is actual co-creation of the activities. So this is where a teacher would sit down with students or a group of students to develop what it would look like. So you could choose a standard that you're teaching, and the teacher has already given enough background information and some front loading, and then really talk about how do we make this come to life. At my school, we do co-creation of lessons with the assistance of instructional coaches. So our instructional coaches always encourage teachers to try something new and to incorporate student voice as well. So hopefully from these examples, you could choose something that works for you and something that you could give permission for teachers to do, provide them options to model for them, and to also visit their classrooms and support what they're doing. In this next section, I'm going to describe how elevating student voice and leadership looks like at the building level. And again, being a first-year principal, I finally feel that I have the agency to be able to do this. And one thing that I think about a lot when I'm incorporating student voice and leadership are, am I making sure that I'm incorporating the feedback and the voice and the leadership from all students, not just one group of students? So this is what I mean by this. Especially at the high school level, we have a ton of activities, tons of clubs, arts and music and athletics. And oftentimes we lean on these students when we're looking for volunteers for parent-teacher conferences, or we're looking for volunteers to go to a workshop. And these students have the privilege of being in extracurriculars outside of the school day to explore their interests and talents. But I also know with the community that I serve, not all students can be in extracurriculars. And these students have interests and talents as well, but they may have a family situation that does not allow for them to have flexibility outside of regular school hours. So I know that many of my students who are immigrants or first generation, they have the responsibility of going home right after school because they have to take care of their younger siblings because their parent is still at work or both their parents are working multiple jobs. So I thought of a way to incorporate their voice and develop their leadership so it's all encompassing. The example that I have here is actually a poster that I just used last month. So in my first year as principal, I developed something called a listening tour. And students are very familiar with this because this is the same format of the flyer and the poster that I send out via email, and I also have blown up poster size. And the only thing that changes here is the date. So I hold at least one per month. And to make it accessible to all students, not just those who are involved in extracurriculars, I make sure to hold these during student lunch periods. So during 4th, 6th, and 8th period lunch, I go into their space. So right off the student cafeteria, I have the student activities office. It's a very large office. It has windows, lots of seating, some soft seating in there as well. It's a very welcoming space. So during that date that I advertise, I make sure that I go there for all those lunch periods. And I have this poster hanging outside of the student activities office so that students know today's the day. And I also give them some options. So you can use this listening tour in multiple different ways. So some of them, especially at the beginning of the year, just wanted to come in and introduce themselves. And that's great because I want to get to know as many students as possible and know their names. Some are very curious about me, especially being a new principal. So a lot of them just came up to me and asked me, you know, why did I choose East Leiden? Why do I want to be a principal? They also have the ability to share ideas, and I've gotten a lot of ideas ranging from, you know, could they have more options in the vending machines so that they have snacks that they would prefer and not just the healthy baked ones. But they also shared ideas in terms of new events that they would love to see. Or when we have all school assembly, what's something that they want to see happen in our school to make it more engaging for students. And that goes hand in hand with the last bullet point there is providing feedback. So we want students to become self-advocates. So if I am implementing a new process and procedure in the school, I do want to hear from students. How are they feeling about this procedure? And that's very different than making a decision to implement the procedure, because that decision rests on me, it rests on the building admin team, but we can always adjust based on feedback. And I always want to create a culture where students feel comfortable in coming to an adult and sharing that feedback. But I'm also very clear with them what can change and what cannot change. And I think students really appreciate that transparency. So this is an example of what it could look like at the secondary level. I'm in a high school. I think this can also work in a junior high. And the key things are, you know, keep it consistent. So how often are you willing to commit the time to do this? Be in their space. so that they're more accessible and you are more accessible. If I were to hold this in my office, I think that would eliminate a whole group of students who may not feel comfortable coming into the principal's office. So I make sure to go into their space. And then I also make sure to give them examples of what the listening tour could be used for so that they know and there's a structure to it. But I will say there are some students who just want to come in and have lunch with me, and that's totally fine. When I think about my elementary friends, my elementary admin, I do have 2 daughters who are in elementary school, and they love it when their principal and the APs are in the lunchroom with them, helping them open their juice boxes or their milk cartons, opening up their bag of chips. And so that could be the in with elementary students. So not only are building admin helping them with their lunch, but maybe just taking a seat after you open that milk carton and just asking how things are going, or being more specific with the question. Just the other day, we implemented a new school, in the new school store, certain products that they could turn in their tickets for. So you could ask them general questions or more pointed questions, but again, being in their space, helping them, and also welcoming their feedback. In the last section here, I'm going to outline how this looks like in terms of elevating student voice and leadership at the district level. This level requires a lot more coordination on a building admin's part. And if you're a district admin and listening to this, this may be something that you can consider as well. So there are lots of different stakeholders when you think about the district level, right? So you have district office, that includes the superintendent, assistant superintendents, possibly directors as well. And whatever you're developing to elevate student voice and leadership, I would check with district office to make sure that there's an alignment with the strategic plan that they have. In addition to that, the superintendent, who is the liaison to the Board of Education, could discuss the activity that you would like to do with these elected officials, just so that they know and they understand what's on the minds of the building admin. Other stakeholders to consider are community partners, because sometimes when you think about the district level, there could be community partners such as the public library, the park district, businesses who are looking to hire students. They are going to be a part of that process, and you may want to reach out to them as well to make sure that student voice and leadership is coming to that full actualization. And we cannot forget our parents and guardians, because if we have our students, especially at the district level, we want to make sure that the parents and guardians are supporting this type of initiative, especially if it's their own child. So an example that I'm very proud to share is the ability to have student board members. So what you see here is a screenshot of what we have on the Leiden's website. You see our Board of Education, and it is made up of 7 elected adult members. But on the lower right-hand side, you will see that we have 2 student board members. There's 2 high schools in my district. There's East Leiden and there's West Leiden. And these students are nominated to serve on the board to represent student voice of the school that they attend. So Adriel here is a senior, and he attends East Leiden. I just had a meeting with him this morning about graduation, and he's in his 2nd year because he started serving last year as a junior. His counterpart, Jonathan, is the student board member from West Leiden, and Jonathan is currently a junior in his 1st year. So as Adriel graduates at the end of this school year, next year I am going to nominate a rising junior who will take his spot. I do think it's important to emphasize that student board members, by Illinois state law, are supposed to serve in an advisory capacity. So Adriel and Jonathan can bring up items to discuss in board meetings. They can answer questions from board members or administrators, but they cannot vote like the adult board members can vote. And that's written into school code. But this still gives them so much agency because anything that matters to them, and they really take it upon themselves that they want to represent all of East Leiden and all of West Leiden, they are getting practice in how do they represent, a school of 1,800 students. I also love the fact that they have a 2-year term, because oftentimes a 1-year term may be too short to see any change being impacted. So this is a big commitment from each of the student board members. So going back to the previous slide, we have to make sure the stakeholder group of the parents and guardians are on board as well. So this is something that could happen at the district level. And again, in Illinois school code, they allow for it. And in some of the resources that I provide in the HyperDoc, you will see a resource from the Illinois Association of School Boards, and Leiden is highlighted as one of the 3 school districts that has student board members, and we've been doing it for quite some time, and we're very proud of this. In other states, this may not be a part of legislation, and so I thought about how this could look like at the district level, and even for elementary school as well. So it could be that every time that there is a board meeting, there is an invitation to a student or a group of students to come, and it could be as simply as leading the group in the pledge. And in addition to that, they can also share their experience about something in their school. And the district office can identify themes for every meeting. So maybe this month's theme is talking about the new library and the books that are coming in. So the students could give their experience in how things are going, how are they using the library, are they enjoying reading certain types of texts. And then another type is working with teachers because they're doing phenomenal things in their classrooms. And perhaps they and their students want to highlight a project that they're doing. So project-based learning is something that is very common in STEM classrooms, and it could be something that students at any grade level, elementary, junior high, or high school, is working on, and now they're so excited to share the results with the district, so that the district office and the Board of Education and the community members who attend the meetings know what they're working on and what matters to them. So for all of these 3 levels, I hope that I've given you enough options and examples for you to try this in your school. And if you have already been trying this in your building or district, kudos to you, because you're doing great work in developing the advocates, the self-advocates in the students. You're developing future leaders of our country as well. So I hope you found that this information has been useful. And you will be getting access to a HyperDoc that has an outline of this presentation and more resources as well. And I made sure to pick resources that are quick reads, so anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and things that you could use at the classroom, building, and district level. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Julie. What incredible examples, and sharing your expertise at all these different levels, and how we can really elevate voice and leadership with our students. And as I was thinking about what you're saying, and really how all of this does really truly start at the classroom level, and making sure that our teachers are supported. And you shared a lot of great examples on that, modeling, giving permission, providing those options. And it really does start with kind of that foundational understanding, that professional learning, which is practical. And that's really what Van Andel Institute for Education strives for, and that's what we can provide for teachers, because we want to make sure professional learning is memorable, meaningful, and fun, right? It's something that's very practical, it's tangible. You can go back into your classroom and do this right away, and it's relevant to what it is you want. It's going to change the needle, transform what you're looking for in your classroom. So we make sure that we have practitioners that are working with students every single day. So we know what's going on in the trenches. We have students come to us during the school day, after school programs. We make sure that we practice what we preach, and we see what works in classrooms and what doesn't work. And then we share that with teachers. And then we want to make sure we are authentic, that we keep things real. So if teachers want to learn how to take their classroom outside and to have engaging experiences in bringing down those classroom walls, we meet those teachers outside and we immerse them in something that's very practical and authentic to them. And so because you are watching this presentation, you have the opportunity to receive 20% off on any products and services, including our professional development. So please go to that website, vaieducation.org/thank-you, for more details on that. And with that, I'd like just to thank you for watching this presentation, and please be sure to follow us on our various social media channels, because we provide a lot of different updates on upcoming events like these types of presentations, other webinars, and also resources for both teachers and administrators. And of course, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Lamb, for sharing your experiences and being a part of this. Thank you so much. All right, thank you, everybody.